thought would be back here, but they are back here. The Knicks are here for the first time since 2000.
Hi, eSports Radio fans. This show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, Single A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
Rise and shine. It's 4 a.m. The stars are still out. The sun is beneath the horizon, but it's time to punch in and go to work. The comfort of your warm-ups turns into the grinding out of your reps as the clinking and the clanking of the plates create a symphony of euphoria. There's no other feeling like it. Earn it, burn it, and take what's yours. iSports Radio has proudly partnered with Vital Apparel, a brand that not only fits great, but also promotes and donates to mental health research. Use our code IESR to get 15% off their comfortable and inspiring gym wear and help them on their amazing journey to support mental health. Go hard, take part in your iron therapy, and be strong. Because when your mental health is as strong as you are, there's no telling how far you'll go.
Hey there, iEsports Radio fans. Be sure to check out our sponsor, Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You just finished your very own wedding or baby shower invitations and you're looking for that extra special touch? Maybe you just wrote a letter to a relative or a friend and you want to add to their smile when they receive it. Then seal the deal with Cecilia's handmade sealing wax stamps for your invitations, letters, and gifts. You bring the deal, we'll bring the seal. You can find them on Instagram at sealthedeal_wax stamps and on Facebook, Seal the Deal Wax Seals.
For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the IE Sports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at IE Sports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
And welcome back, everybody, to a special New York State of Sports here on IE Sports Radio, direct feed for all that is sports. Of course, if you saw the awesome backdrop here, shout out to Jen B from Show of the Land for this awesome background picture of me and Big Mike in both of our shows here on the network. Again, I'll introduce our guest here for this special episode, host of Indy Sports Nation every Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern, Big Mike. Mike, how are you?
Ricky, I am great, man. Thanks for having me on. I was kind of hoping it would come down to these two teams in the conference finals, and here we are.
So be sure to follow Mike, and I'll throw that on the screen at IndySports_IESR or at The Chill Mike. On X, you can follow me at NY State Sports IE or at Ricanator555. And you can follow us at IE Sports Radio, X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Subscribe on YouTube. And hey, maybe throw in the comments that you subscribe because of New York State of Sports or Indy Sports Nation. That'd be pretty cool too. So be sure to do that for both shows. It's great that we both go on Friday. It's going to be a lot of fun. As we mentioned, Pacers Knicks coming up on Wednesday night. I'll throw the schedule at the bottom. Remember, all the games are on TNT. I think they're all 8 p.m. Eastern, so all primetime games, which is great. It should be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be great, and we'll throw this out there before we get into the whole particulars. I mentioned the broadcast crew. So, Mike, I know you and I talked off air. I think one of the interesting things in the series is Reggie Miller on courtside for this whole series. Now, I looked this up because I was like, well, why is Reggie doing it? Brian Anderson, who's normally the number one guy, is at the French Open. TNT does the French Open.
Right.
So now it's their first year doing it, so that's next week. So that would make sense. Now the question's going to be, when you look at this series, I wonder, do you think it's going to have anything at all? What do you make of it? And also Draymond going to be in MSG for the first two. I can't imagine. First, having the inside the NBA guys at MSG is going to be crazy because we know how much Shaq talks about the Knicks. We know how much Charles Barkley talks about the Knicks. We know how much Draymond talks about the Knicks. That is going to be a very hostile inside the NBA set. Yes. On Wednesday in the Garden.
Yeah, no doubt about it. The only thing they're missing due to contractual reasons is probably Stephen A.
Which would be next year. We are a year away from there. At least Stephen A. in there. He might be on one of those. You never know unless ESPN shipped him to Oklahoma City or Minnesota or something like
Right.
that, which would be interesting. So we know Reggie had an impact last time because Josh Hart made sure Reggie heard the boots last time.
Right.
Do you sense something similar again?
I think so. I think you kind of embrace this in a good way. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be getting nuts, but this thing dates back to, obviously, the Reggie Miller days, and this has been a fantastic rivalry in my opinion. Even though it's been a few years since it's been in the Eastern Conference Finals, first, to be exact. But yeah, I think they're gonna milk it for all it's worth.
So as you mentioned, it's the rematch of last year's Eastern Conference semifinals. Great series, high octane drama. So the question you have about this series, because I know in New York, it's everybody's healthy. OG's healthy, Hart's healthy, Brunson's healthy. So we'll start here. I think we'll start with this one. Is it a surprise both teams are here? We know everybody talks about Cleveland, and Indiana did a great job against them. We know everybody talks about Boston, and I know that people are talking about Tatum, but Tatum got hurt end of game 4. Knicks had already won 2 games going in, so I don't really know if that made a big deal. Are you surprised as much as I am that this is the matchup?
Yeah, I am. I mean, the homer in me would be like, oh no, we were going to do this, blah blah blah. Look, I said it on my show. I went on Gen B's show and said the same thing. With the Cavs Pacers series, I thought the Pacers would give the Cavs fits, but I thought the Cavs would ultimately end up winning that series. And the opposite happened. I mean, they gave them fits all right, and then next, 5 games later, they're moving on. So to be in all fairness, I don't think anybody had the Pacers in 5 over Cleveland on their card.
No, I don't think so either. I think that you thought Indiana could push them a little bit, and I think it's surprised the Knicks here because they talked about it all season long. They couldn't beat Cleveland, they couldn't beat Boston, they couldn't beat Thunder, they couldn't beat the Lakers, and the fact that they had these issues, and I would think even going to the first round where the Pistons was a struggle compared to what a lot of people thought. Just 5 out of the 6 were very close games. Even Boston, you had the Knicks down double digits every game for the first 5 games that they could, and to finally have that complete performance in Game 6 that kind of, I guess, ended the hex because they hadn't had a performance like that in a long time. Especially, it was the first time they closed the series at MSG since 1999. Wow. Which is insane to even think that's that. But hey, that's where we're at. So I agree with you. I think it's a real surprise. And that's a good thing because I think low key this has been one of the more, this could become a rivalry in the sport because we know these 2 teams kind of don't like each other. We know that the Halliburton and Brunson stuff from WWE last year in the summer, but they had that going. I think you're looking at this, Big Mike, this could be one of those things where this becomes a new rivalry in the East, especially if Giannis goes other places, that you might have Pacers-Knicks being the top rivalry in the East for the next few years.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I wouldn't count out, even though the Pacers was able to overcome the Cavs, I wouldn't rule them out going forward next year either. And we'll see how that shakes out. But no, for sure. I think this very well could be a rivalry for the next few years. Now we'll see what the Pacers do in the offseason. Miles Turner is it's a contract year for him. And to bring him on and keep what they've got is going to put them for that first layer of the luxury tax. And the past Pacers have not been willing to do that. But I think this, being back-to-back years in the Eastern Conference Finals, I think that's going to change some minds with the ownership. But, who knows?
So let's look at now going back to last year to this year. What's the big difference for the Pacers compared to facing the Knicks 1 year ago? Because essentially, I think a few days ago was 1 year the date of Game 7.
Right.
From 365 days later, what's the big difference that has Indiana back here, if there is one?
They are better defensively. Now, am I trying to suggest they're a lockdown defensive unit? No. But they were awful last year. One of the worst in the league last year. And now they're back up to, they finished right around the middle of the pack, which we saw last year how explosive, and they've shown it this year at times too, how explosive they can be offensively. So now, being they still have that capability but are much better defensively than they were, it's made them an overall better team. And they still have the bench. Well, the bench, you could argue in some categories hasn't been as productive, but they're still productive, and that they're able to rotate those guys in and give people like Halliburton, 30 minutes as opposed to 39. So those couple of things, I think, but especially the defensive side of it, makes this team significantly better than what we saw last year.
Yeah, I would agree with that because you look at the Pacers, and to me, it was more okay. And I think it still kind of holds true now. I still think the Knicks are the ones that don't, and you'll get into this later because it's a topic you wanted to bring up, that the Knicks can't have a track meet. And I think it was kind of the same thing with the Celtics. They didn't want to have that track meet and compete. The Pacers don't have the same 3-point firepower Boston does, but it's not that far off. So I think being able to have more stops defensively would have helped them at the Garden a couple games earlier in that series last year.
Absolutely.
I think the big difference for the Knicks this time is Cat.
Yes.
And Cat, I know, took a lot of stuff from people, myself included, because there are games he just did not show up against Detroit. There are games he did not show up against Boston. He's a player to me that still looks for calls every now and then. When he doesn't get them, his game goes down a little bit. But doing some research in this series, Cat in all 3 games against Indiana this year, one of the things to keep a look at in regular season we know doesn't mean much because remember the Knicks lost all 4 games to Boston and won the series.
Right.
The Knicks lost 3 or 4 to Detroit, still won the series. Cat in 3 games against Indiana this season, 30 points, 12 boards, about 2 assists, a block, and a steal per game. And I wonder, with Indiana, last year the Knicks didn't really have that big that could score, and they kind of had to use more of Hart and Anunoby, and they didn't have Bridges obviously last year, but you had DiVincenzo, let's say, instead of Bridges. I wonder, can Siakam push Cat to being more of a post player? Boston kind of made Cat have to go in the paint. But is Cat going to settle for more threes and be more comfortable with his game, knowing that he can have that success against a team like Indiana?
It's a very interesting point. I was actually glad you brought that up too. That's been a talk around here because that's, I think right now we'll get into this later, I'm sure, but when you start looking at the matchups, on the court, that is a concern from my standpoint, as a Pacers fan, and I think a lot of people here in Indy as well. How is Coach Carlisle going to, play him defensively? We're going to see. I would imagine we're going to see a switch between Siakam doing his thing and then Miles Turner, who is playing much more physically defensively than he has. He's always been a very, very good rim protector, but sometimes defensively we get pushed around a little bit, and we saw that early in the season, especially. I mean, Towns there was nothing Miles was going to do about it. But I've noticed that's stepped up a little bit, so I'm really intrigued on how they defend him going forward. I think they could get him to do some things, might be out of his comfort zone, but if not, that's going to make this series really interesting.
Looking at these splits in all 3 games, the Knicks had essentially 7 players scoring double figures now, albeit 2 of those were Deuce McBride and Landry Shamet. But you had Cat at 30 points, Brunson 22, and Hart 22. What I'm interested in, Mike, is you look at Indiana. Indiana only had, and I think it's something that actually helps. I mean, it looks at, does the regular season truly mean much? Only 2 players on the Pacers this season against the Knicks started every game. That is Halliburton and Siakam.
Yep.
Now I don't know if that's getting talked about in Indiana. It's like, okay, well, we're actually healthy compared to those 3 games. So first game was, I think, second game of the year. Knicks won 123-98. Game 2 of this year was back in November. So these 2 teams played twice in the first 3 weeks. Pacers won 132-121. And then February 11th, I think was the game before the All-Star break. The Knicks won 128-115. Cat had 40 in that game. Is that talked about a lot over there in Indiana? The fact that the Pacers maybe weren't whole because the team's going to out only 2 players started all 3 games.
Yeah, so a good first half of the season, not first half, but the first few months rather. No Nebhard and no Neesmith for the Pacers, and we had 2. We had Jackson and the other is escaping me at the moment. But our 2 backup bigs were out. They've been out for the season. So then you had 2 starters out. So basically all you had was Halliburton, who was playing dinged up at the time, and Siakam and Turner was also dinged up. So they were just going through a lot of junk early in the season, and it's funny because I remind people, I think people blew them off when they had that 10-15 start, and it's no excuse. I mean, because its injuries are what they are, but after a while they're going to catch up to you if you have so many, and it forced the Pacers to put in rotations. Heck, they're bringing in essentially G leaguers, and it makes Coach Carlisle experiment with it. Tyrese is trying to do too much, and it just didn't mesh. So finally, once especially Nemby and Nesmith got healthy and got back in the lineup, this is what finally kind of turned the trajectory for the Pacers in a completely different direction. That they've been 42-16 since. So I'm intrigued now. I mean, that's why I say this series I think it's gonna be fantastic, because now you got essentially two fully healthy squads, and I know again we've got a couple backup bigs who are done for the year, but they've done this run with their current bench and put this out in the past several months. So it's a different squad than what February. They were starting to turn a corner. Then Knicks got that win in February, but yeah, before that, I mean, this is they're a completely different squad. Second half of the season compared to the first half.
So before we go to our commercial break, the big talk is going to be Tyrese Halliburton. I don't think we're going to get the whole Brunson versus Cunningham that seemed to happen against Detroit, but Brunson versus Halliburton is going to be a fun matchup. Not them guarding each other, but
right.
2 point guards. Looking at Halliburton this postseason, he's had his Reggie Miller moments, whether it's the comeback in Game 2 in Cleveland, 31 in Game 5 in Cleveland to close out the series, the epic comeback to close out Milwaukee. In 10 games this playoffs, he's averaging 17.5, 5.5 boards, and over 9 assists. What has been the difference in Halliburton unlocking more in this season compared to a year ago?
There's a couple of different things. He's healthier. He'd been dealing with some back issues even through last year and first part of this year. So that's part of it. Obviously, the other part of it is just experience and getting to know he's young. I mean, a lot of these guys are young, obviously, but here he is 24, I think about to turn 25 years old. So just getting more of a feel for it, getting more familiar with it, with Coach Carlisle's system. Obviously, now you've got Siakam for a full year, because a lot of people forget he came over in a trade, middle part of last year. So I think it's just a variety of all these things. And one thing I wanted to throw out, and I didn't even realize this until just recently, but he's the first player in NBA history to have multiple playoff games with 30 points, 15 assists, and 0 turnovers. So I guess that would be another aspect too. He's taking very good care of the ball. So just all these things, healthier, build better chemistry, and experience. It's just he's just taking his game to the next level. So it's going to very well make for some very fun basketball, because we all know what Brunson can do and see what he's been doing. So yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun.
To me, I look at Halliburton, and going back to last year against these two teams, he's got it. I think, to me, at least late in these games in the playoffs, he's been more of the aggressor and taking the ball. One thing, you look back at Game 1 last year, the Knicks made him want to pass everything, and that made him to not take chances. Then he started taking chances and taking crazy shots with his weird follow through, and somehow they all go in. It's like Sean Marion of yesteryear.
Yeah,
I think that's been kind of a big thing. When he wants to take over, he can take over. That's the key, though. How many times does he want to take over? And it's kind of like with Cade. The Knicks turned Cade into a pass-first guy. I think that's still the key here. Can they make Halliburton as a pass-first guy in these games? Because I think both these teams believe they can win a close game. Indiana believes it because they've had 2 epic comebacks in this postseason. The Knicks believe it because every time they've been in a close game, and they've had multiple 20-point comebacks. So even they kind of know, like, we get in the last 5 minutes of these games, we got the guy who won most clutch player in Jalen Brunson. We'll get into how Indiana will guard him a little bit later. But both these teams have belief. And I think that's the scary factor, that I think you're going to have nail-biting finishes, and we're going to be breaking down last 2-minute reports the entire postseason because we're going to have weird non-travels and weird non-foul calls.
Oh, yeah.
You hate that, but you like that. But back to Halliburton, I think it's more, does he want to shoot? If he wants to shoot, the Knicks are in a little bit of trouble. Can they make him pass? And especially he's a unique guy because, all right, do you put OG on him? Do you put Bridges on him? That's going to be interesting. I think it'll be OG, but I wouldn't be shocked if they kind of switched off.
Yeah, I would think OG be the primary guy. That would be my guess. But I'm glad you brought that up too, because one of the things that he had Halliburton had stated locally that he had learned back when he was on the Olympic team, he didn't see the floor a whole lot because he had struggles up until recently. He's been playing much better defensively, but that was his big struggle. He could barely guard a chair. But one of the guys who's been in his ears as of late is Joel Embiid, and they forged a pretty good relationship, during the Olympics and whatnot. And Embiid's been in his ear saying, "Man, you got to shoot the ball. You got to start shooting." And that was one thing that even the fan base is like. There's some times he'll leave points out there just to pass the ball, and they're taking it instead of taking a 6-foot shot and getting an easy 2. He chucks out somebody for a 30-foot 3-pointer and they miss, and then it's whoever it is the other team the other way. So I mean, we will see. I know we'll get to that down the later on in the show here, but that will be one thing that if the Knicks are able to do that, that's obviously going to be advantage Knicks.
So let's take a quick time out. We'll be right back, and we'll talk how tempo makes a difference in this series. We will talk coaching edges. We will talk X factors, and we'll give you our picks for the course of the next 2 weeks. You're listening to a special episode of New York State of Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all the sports. We'll be right back talking more Knicks Pacers after this.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Big Mike from Indy Sports Nation. Come hang out with me each and every Friday, 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time, where we talk things Indiana sports. We talk Colts, Pacers, Fever, Indy Ignite, and we dive into the college scene as well. Boilermakers, Hoosiers, Irish, Bulldogs, and every school in between. And we don't stop there. We'll sprinkle in some NHRA and cover the IndyCar series. From the turf to the hardwood to the track, we got you covered. Come hang out with your boy, Big Mike, each and every Friday, 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Indy Sports Nation, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Davidson.
It's your boy, Dentarius Lava.
And we are the hosts of Fast Break here on IE Sports Radio, where we discuss everything in the world of basketball from prep to the pros.
You guys should definitely check us out, man. Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We got all the basketball information you guys need, so we look forward to you guys listening in.
And please do, because we are the best basketball show on this side of the Mississippi. And please do check us out on Twitter at FastBreakISR. D-Lock, where's our time again?
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That give you guys plenty of time on a Sunday.
Tune in.
And welcome back to the special Eastern New York State of Sports here on iSports Radio, direct feed for all of the sports. Our Eastern Conference Finals preview, Knicks Pacers with Big Mike from Indy Sports Nation. And Mike, I was thinking of this when we were playing the commercial for your show. This time last year was kind of the same thing in that during this series, we have Liberty Fever on Saturday at a Gainbridge Fieldhouse with the day before the Knicks travel to Indiana. So that's going to be a lot of fun with Sabrina Nescu and Caitlin Clark, and both teams looked really good in the opener last week, particularly Indiana, because I think New York beat Vegas in the game. They only made like 2 threes, which was pretty incredible. Natasha Cloud looks really good. But you got a jam-packed show Friday. It's kind of like what I had last week between this series, the Fever versus the Liberty, which is going to feel like the WNBA Finals in a sense, and the Indy 500. I think having the TNT guys and the Indy 500 the same day in Indiana, I don't know what that state's going to do because it's going to be insane.
It's going to be amazing. And this hasn't happened a lot, but to be able to have the Indy 500 going on and then get home from that just in time to, or if you're really into it, go just down the road and actually attend both, which I will not do because Indy 500 attending that takes so much out of you, just being in the sunlight for that many hours. But yes, it's going to be 350,000 plus at the Motor Speedway, and then Game 3 at Gainbridge. Indianapolis is going to be absolutely rocking, and it's just I tell people, it's not the people think of Indianapolis and may not be the sexiest thing you think of, but the month of May when you got Pacers and Racers going on, man, it is electric. There's nothing like it.
I wonder if you can combine the cost of admission to the Indy 500 and Game 3, would it still be more than a Knicks ticket? Because the Knicks ticket was it like $600 to get in the building, which is insane. I imagine this is going to be at least $4,000, four digits just to get into the building for this time around.
Yeah, I looked at tickets here a few days ago, and you could get in like a nosebleed at Gainbridge for like $300. That was last I saw. I'm sure it's higher now because it's sold out and it's all secondhand stuff now. But yeah, that was before it sold out. So then you can actually get to the Indy 500 relatively cheap if you really want to, but depending on where you want to set. But so it's not New York bad in that regard when it comes to the cost, but it's going to be every bit as electric, I think.
So right now, the cheapest ticket you can get for Wednesday's Game 1, as we record this, is standing room only, $568.
Okay.
And section 400, which is that guarantees you're sitting down, is $671, which is crazy. Game 2, which is Friday, which is Memorial Day weekend, according to StubHub, cheapest ticket, $700.
Wow.
So yeah, that's insane, but that's playoffs. That's the craziest. So let's get into the topic you wanted to talk about, and that's tempo. And we all love to break this stuff down, but you think tempo gives Indiana an edge in this series? Why?
Yes, because no one's been able to keep up with them. You look at these, and I know I can date. I don't want to date back to last year too much because obviously there's injuries on your side of it too. But from what I've seen, correct me if I'm wrong, I've watched the Knicks enough just because they get a ton of coverage, but I still see guys getting a lot of minutes, like your starters getting a lot of minutes. And I know it's been a Thibodeau knock. Is like, hey, it's almost like he's running his guys into the ground. And as good as the starting 5 is, I would argue hey, look how good the Cleveland starting 5 is. And they were gassed in Game 2. And that was, I don't know if you saw much of it, but even in Game 5, when Cleveland got out to like a 19-point lead and Pacers started coming back, you see the Cavs have their hands on their knees, hunched over, open mouth breathing, and they're gassed. And so that's going to be a thing to me. Can the Knicks find a way to just slow down that Pacers tempo and get from a defense, especially from that defensive standpoint, which we touched on earlier, and force guys like Tyrese to have to slow it down and have to distribute more and not take less shots, things like that. right now, I'm just not seeing where I think anybody in the league can run with the Indiana Pacers. It's just finding out a way to slow that pace down, and that's how you typically beat the Indiana Pacers.
So I would agree with you. I think that bench-wise, the Knicks don't have a lot there. You're looking at Rob, Deuce McBride. I think you're going to have to see some Precious Achiuwa in this series just to get something. Maybe you see Landry Shamet, but he hasn't really done anything of note. Tibbs shortens the rotation. At the same time, I think the Knicks have looked fresher in games against Detroit and Boston because their guys play so much. Like, I think their fourth quarters and their comebacks, they tend to get better as the game goes on, which I think is going to help them. And I think they're used to more of they're used to kind of that somewhat fast, because they've played against a team that shoots 40,000 3-point shots, or every shot's a 3-point shot. The fact that this becomes they can play that now. I think ideally they want to play that grinded out 1990s style of basketball, but the Knicks are also a strong offensive team as well, to where I think they're much better offensively this time. Like the Pacers are better defensively than they were a year ago. The Knicks are better offensively than they were a year ago. And I think they won't mind having that up and down. I think the key is going to be, can Indiana keep the pace with their shooting, and then allow them to take Brunson full court down the floor. Because as much as Brunson did a good job against Nembhard and Nesmith last year, I think the biggest pest was McConnell. And that's having to watch, how does Carlisle balance that out? Do they still trust Nembhard and Nesmith from last year, or do we now see them go quicker with McConnell on him? Or maybe McConnell plays more than he did a year ago, than this postseason, because now that they kind of can see what that matchup is. I mean, McConnell this year didn't start the same game against the Knicks, but only averaged 6 points a game. But you wonder if now that's going to be the guy. Maybe Mathurin now becomes like, how do you see them taking Brunson completely from court, basically from one end of the court to the other? And that still, you want to be fast, but you want to slow down Brunson and make the Knicks have to be a half-court team.
Yeah, he's going to rotate that out in my mind. I mean, because you're right. McConnell's that guy that just annoys you. He's one of those guys that, you want him on your team. You're like, hey, I'll take that guy. But then, when you're playing against him, he just annoys you because he can get scrappy. And what I mean by that is, he can get a couple steals from you. And at the same time, he led the league in assists off the bench this year. So when he's doing that defensively, he's turning around and, facilitating offensively, which helps, again, keeps that pace going, right? I think with the play that we're seeing from Nesmith, and I felt going into the series, and I would almost argue you could throw Miles Turner in that mix too. I could make a solid argument that Nesmith right now is the playoff MVP for the Indiana Pacers. Just what he's doing on both sides of the ball. He was very key in that, couple of Cleveland comebacks, to be honest. But Nemby has become playoff Nemby from last year to a degree. And defensively, he has stepped up. And I shared a stat on my show last week. When he was on, and granted, I know Brunson and Mitchell are not the same player. I get that. But Mitchell shot 23% when guarded by Nemby in the series. So I thought that was a interesting stat. And again, I know Brunson's not, Mitchell. But I think from a confidence standpoint and the way those guys have both picked up defensively, I think, and then throwing McConnell in there, I think that'll kind of be the rotation, because obviously he's going to want to keep the guys fresh for about, for both sides, because the one thing we've both seen our teams do, no depth. I mean, we get down 19 points, we're like, hey, we feel fine, we're good, we'll just make that comeback and beat you. So no, I mean, nothing's going to be safe. No, I don't think any lead's safe until that clock gets zero at the end of the fourth quarter.
Do you see the Pacers pulling a trick out of the Joe Mazzulla playbook and playing the Hack-a-Mitch?
Not initially. I could see where if they find themselves at if things aren't going well at a disadvantage, then that's obviously something he could pull out the playbook. Don't think he wants to. But, then again, he's had some head scratchers this season too. from a coaching standpoint. I like Carlisle. Do not get me wrong. I think he's a very good coach. But there's definitely been some head-scratching rotations and things that he's done. You're like, what are we doing here? So, but short answer, I don't think. But again, he's proven me wrong a few times in the past, which is why I'm not coaching.
I think Mitchell Robinson's an intriguing player in this series as well, because let's remember he didn't play in that postseason series last year because of the whole stuff with Joel Embiid in Philadelphia.
Right.
And I think he's actually the fresh player because he didn't play the bulk of the year, and he kind of had a breakout series against Boston in that he could dictate in the paint. And Indiana Jim, without the depth in terms of bigs, they've got depth in terms of wing guys, but the big depth is going to be the concern. And I was shocked watching Game 5. He actually hits free throws. I mean, now he's still terrible. He's still a 40% foul shooter, which I think is ridiculous that you're an NBA player and you can't make half your free throws. But
that's pretty bad, yes.
He has been very interesting because he was a guy people thought should trade at the deadline, myself included, because you didn't know what you're going to get. And now he's kind of the wild card because can Mitch give you rebounding edge that Hartenstein did last year? Or Hartenstein in that series, they only had 7 points, but he had 9 boards a game. If Mitchell gets you 9-10 boards and maybe adds 8, 9, 10 points, that's a big boost to this team. That last year the Knicks' 4th best scorer in the series, I have it up here, is Alec Burks.
Wow.
Like, you got Brunson at 30, DiVincenzo at 22, OG, who only played 3 games, was 15. Burks was basically 15 in 6 games. The only time I really remember seeing Alec Burks is Game 5.
Yeah.
And a little bit of Game 6. That's wild.
That is wild. I wouldn't have thought that off the top of my head. But you make a good point though with the rebounding, because that is one area that the Pacers have struggled with for pretty much the entire season. So that'll be imperative for the Pacers to keep the edge, within reason. They did that with Cleveland, for example, and except the one game where they got absolutely just ran out of the arena, Cleveland absolutely destroyed them on the boards. I think it was like a 19 rebound advantage. It was just it was ridiculous. And the Knicks always did especially in the series last year, did a great job of just getting in there, and if anything else, just tipping it back out to the backcourt and resetting. And that was a thing that drove us, Pacers fan, drove us crazy. So that would be definitely advantage to Knicks there, especially if he can contribute like that. And again, the Pacers just, although they've improved, that is still a weak spot for them.
The other thing to look at from the Knicks last year in that series, Josh Hart led the team in rebounding, had almost 11 per game. The same guy who had the first triple-double in Knicks playoff history since Walt Frazier. So he's a player I think it's going to be interesting to see what he can do. I'll throw up it, to be fair, as we talk about the next topic, I will throw up Indiana's numbers and I'll see if I can find some weird stuff to throw at you there. But let's talk about the coaching. And I gave Missoula the edge over Tibbs to be in the last series, and boy, did I look stupid. Joe Missoula, I think, kind of a little bit too arrogant in his philosophies, and it backfired. Who do you like in terms of the coaching side, Tibbs or Carlisle?
I'll go the homer route on this one. I'm going to go the edge Carlisle, even though and that's no shade on Tibbs. I've never liked, and I'm not saying he doesn't have reason for it or whatever. I'm just a big fan of coaches who can get guys off the bench buying in and running the system that he's designed. Because I think right now, if the Pacers didn't have the bench they have, we're not even having this conversation because the Pacers are not in the finals or Eastern Conference Finals. That's just my take. I think, and it's a simple one, but so far, and again, we're going to find out here starting tomorrow night, but so far in the playoff series, it's worked pretty well for Carlisle.
I think it's close.
It's close. Oh yeah, it's not close.
I think it's close, but I would give the edge to Carlisle because I think you look at his overall track record as a coach, getting to the conference finals back-to-back years, and he's kind of grown with this group.
Yes.
Not saying Tibbs Tibbs hasn't grown, I think, but his style, I think, is starting to work, and he has the belief of those guys. Like Brunson will run through a wall for Tibbs. Like those guys, every time Tibbs gets blasted in the media, you always see Hart and those guys come out and like, we love this coach.
Sure.
We love the way he is. So I think, I don't know which one. I think both. I think Tibbs has had some questionable stuff in this postseason. That lack of timeouts using in Detroit late. It's been a couple of different things. I think the fact that Tibbs doesn't really use a bench, but again, everyone shortens their rotation to get to the playoffs anyway. I think it's the fact that he only goes 7 deep at best. People, I think, would want 8 or 9. I think Carlisle, because he's got the title, I think is what gives me the edge here. Tibbs has to get. I mean, as good of a coach Tom Thibodeau is, getting the NBA Finals is kind of the next step for him to kind of enhance his coaching legacy from being the guy that can kind of get you there. Like before the Knicks got here, to me, he was like Buck Showalter. He was the guy that could get you, your team a certain point, but can he get you over the hump? Now that he's gotten the Knicks to this position, to a conference final, you can now kind of look at it. Maybe he is that guy. We'll see.
Sure.
This is the one. If he can be a coach like Carlisle, who's won a title to get here, and beat back-to-back coaches with championships, that really helps his legacy in that regard.
No, I don't disagree with that at all. It's amazing. So I was just going to say real quick, it's amazing. We're talking rotations here real quick. Pacers have been using 10 guys. Now, one of them, sometimes it drives me crazy, but he's used more as a defensive guy more than anything else, just to give maybe somebody a break. But it is crazy to me. I thought they would shrink it too, and they have not yet. Now, that's not to say they won't win this series. Time will tell.
So here's the crazy stats here for the Pacers from last year. You pull it up here. They did have 6 players average double figures. Let's make it 7 because Toppin averaged 9.9. We're gonna round up and give him 10. That's 7. Rebounding. What do you think the rebounding for Indiana, who had the most per game in that series?
This is going to probably throw me for a loop and I have not looked, so shame on me, but I would naturally assume the Knicks. But,
I'm saying from Indiana players. I'm not talking team.
Okay, Indiana players. I might repeat what it was this year. Might say someone like a Siakam.
It's Siakam, yes, at 6.4.
Yeah, he's averaging 6.9 this year.
So you're looking at a Pacer team that has the bigs with Siakam and Turner, and none of them average more than 6.5 boards per game.
Yep.
Against a Knicks team that didn't have Robinson. Assist-wise, Howard had 7, but McConnell had 6, and Nembhard had 5. So very solid assist numbers. With the rebounding, I think to me points out what you said earlier in a big way. When you're leading rebounder in a 7-game series, only averaging 6 boards a game, that's going to be a little bit interesting. So there's some fun look aheads from last year and kind of what that is, especially since we're talking about crazy 7 games and how series can kind of play itself out. So let's talk some X factors. Who or what you think is the biggest X factor in this series?
We'll throw a couple things out because we were talking about guys who wasn't around last year. So Benedict Mathurin, for example, was not playing last year. Now, can he keep his head on straight? I'm hoping he can. I mean, you saw in the last series, DeAndre Hunter got in his head, and it cost him a game, which was silly. I mean, it's just dumb. So can he keep that composure going into, what's probably going to be a tough physical, lengthy series against the Knicks? So I'm looking to see how he comes up, what he does coming off the bench. There's been games, especially early on in the season, when his number was called, he showed out. In fact, I think one of those games was against the Knicks early. So I look at him, and then I also look at somebody like an Obi Toppin, who, defensively he's at best, but he's also that guy sometimes to get that hot hand and come in off the bench and just all of a sudden, next thing you know, he's got 10, 12 points. And he's gotten some cases gotten you back into a game or extended a lead, something along that line. So those are a couple for me, just to take some of the pressure off, Tyrese and Miles and Siakam.
I forget the game, but Toppin, I think it was more the Garden than in Indiana that he would kind of have that spark last year. He'd get you in the playoffs, that series, a couple of key mini runs here or there that could change some things. So Toppin I think, is a good pick there. For the next two things, one I think is Robinson. I think he's a big under the radar kind of guy that we talk about the Knicks big starters, but Robinson's that sixth bench guy that can kind of go here or there. How Tibbs uses a big man lineup of Cat and Robinson throughout the game, I think will be interesting to see if they try to take advantage of that at some point. The other guy, and I know we've gone almost an hour, and we haven't really talked about him, is Mikal Bridges.
I thought he'd come up.
It's weird to say he's an X factor, but Bridges, he's going to have his games where he just doesn't look good.
Right.
But he's going to have his moments where he looks good.
That's
You saw that 22 points in the closeout game against the Celtics, 23 in game 4. Of course, the 14-point fourth quarter in game 2 that led to the Knicks comeback against Boston. The pace now, Bridges, let's keep in mind, 2 of those games early in the year, he could not find his shot. He was struggling with that three-pointer earlier. Only 12 points against Indiana, and he shot just 20% from 3. You can't tell me that if Mikal Bridges goes through a 7-game series and shoots 20% from 3, I don't want to be him looking at the New York media the entire series, because you're just going to hear 5 first-round picks over and over and over again. Bridges in that Celtics series from 3-point range was about 10 for 30, so about 33%. If he can be around 35, 40% from 3, the Knicks could use a little bit of 3-point shooting. They don't have to match 3-point shots, but get a little bit here or there. That corner 3 is what he's good at, the same kind of with OG. I think Bridges, to me, people talk about Brunson, we'll talk about OG, we'll talk about the guys that were hurt last year, but we don't really, when we look at Knicks Pacers, talk about a guy like Bridges they got him to beat the Celtics, they did, but now can he give them that next step? Similar, remember what we saw last year, DiVincenzo would go on those like mini runs.
Yeah, he would. Drove us nuts.
Can Bridges be a Dante DiVincenzo type?
Right.
I think that is going to be interesting to see now that first hurdle is cleared. Does he play more loose or does he play a little tighter? We're going to find out because yes, he's been in the NBA Finals before, but what's going to happen in this kind of stage, we're going to see. So, yes, it took us that long to get to Mikal Bridges. That's how many crazy storylines that we have.
No kidding, man. It we say it and it comes across, it's cliche to some degree, I think, but we all know that Brunson's going to get his. Cat's going to get his. OG will be OG. Those guys are going to get theirs. Same with the Pacers. Halliburton will get his. Siakam, Turner will get theirs. It's just who on the rest of the support guys, the supporting cast, who's able to win those matchups. And I've said it on my show, we had to have playoff NIMBY from last year, and Nesmith had to be better because Nesmith was not good in the playoffs last year, and so far they both showed up. And obviously, you guys were showing up, so this is brewing for a battle, man.
So let's throw this out there, put our picks on the table. Who wins and why? And how many games?
All right. Well, I would be a complete jerk if I went against my Pacers here. So I can't do that. I'm going to go 7. And I know I've already got some grief on that from buddies of mine. They're like, oh, I think it'll be 6. They don't want to go back to the Garden. And, being the Knicks have home court, I'm like, I don't think the Pacers care. They just don't. We've seen what they've done on the road. And, I think that I just feel with the way they're going right now, the way they're playing, I just don't know the Knicks keep up for 7. So that's where I'm going with that. If the Knicks find a recipe to slow that pace down, then consistently, not just one game, we might have a different story here. But I'm gonna go battle. No lead is safe. We've seen it. You have the Pacers down 8 with 50 seconds. That's not safe. And I can say the same for the Knicks. I mean, Brunson can do Brunson things, and so I see a lot of tight games, crazy finishes. But as the homer, I'll represent my team. But I'll go Pacers in 7.
So let's throw this out there before I make my prediction. Look at road home splits. Pacers the second best team in the league in the East at home this year, 29-11. Only Cleveland was better. On the road, they were 20-20, yet they've only played 10 playoff games. So it kind of shows you what that is. Knicks 27-14 at home, 24-17 on the road. But the Knicks on the road in this postseason have only one loss, and that was Game 5. So both these teams have played extremely well on the road. So it wouldn't be surprised if things go back and forth. The difference between these two teams in the season, one game, and people will point back to a lot of people wanted the Knicks to not play their guys so they would get the 4 so they could play Cleveland. And I know Indiana kind of had the same thing. Do we play our guys to get the 3? And then we end up having to play Boston. And then it's crazy to think now, weeks later, that one game determines who hosts the conference finals. Because I think if Indiana's hosting the conference finals, a lot of people are talking about it a little bit differently. I can't see. I know the Pacers have been here and want to get through the conference final hurdle. I can't see if this series goes 7 and those Knicks players, knowing what could have been last year, that they would lose a game like that at home, especially watching them in a game 6 against Boston wipe the floor with a banged up Celtic team, no doubt. I think the Knicks right now, there's just something. I think to see the Garden like this. I know Indiana's the same thing, and I'm don't want to diminish the Pacers' home court at all. It's great. It's the crowd is awesome.
Both atmospheres are top notch. Absolutely.
But the fact that you can have essentially the city shut down for games like this, I just don't know how the Knicks kind of fall in that spot. I think Brunson's going to make enough plays. I think it's very hard to overlook that Cat can just have his way over and over and over. And that is why you have him for this kind of series. And he might have to be the one that takes over. Hart might be the one that takes over. I think the Knicks have more takeover guys. I think Halliburton can take over for Indiana. I think Siakam can a little bit. Turner maybe. But if Brunson gets going and gets Bridges and gets Hart, and this guy gets going, and OG has a game. The Knicks won a series against Boston where OG did nothing. OG's going to find a way to, I think, make an impact, and we saw that before the hamstring. It looked like OG was going to be the guy last year. They just have too many weapons. I think it goes 7. I think it's close. I think both these teams are going to give us great finishes. But again, I can't see the Knicks losing to the same team in a Game 7 at home. With the Game 7 in that building to go to the NBA Finals, I just think the crowd would be too much of a factor, as great of a road team as Indiana has been. I think Spike bothering Reggie, I think, would be really fun and that kind
of thing. No, man. Hey, you know what? I can't be mad at that pick. I can't be mad at that pick.
I don't think will we have an iconic moment, because it seems like every time we have these games, these Eastern Conference Finals, there's either Reggie's 8 points in 9 seconds or Larry Johnson's 4-point play. Yeah. Do we get another bonus memory from this series? Because again, as I mentioned at the top, the Knicks' last 4 trips to the conference final have all been Pacers.
Yeah, and then we had what was it? Can't remember the year off the top of my head, but it was a conference semifinal, and it was the Roy Hibbert stuff in.
That's right.
And then Pacers.
Carmelo Anthony.
Yeah,
so the one Carmelo Anthony run that gets talked about.
Yeah,
and
of course early on in the rivalry with Ewing and that just sick baseline jumper he had, it was just unstoppable. My God, I mean, it's just so many great memories about this rivalry over the years. So I think we see multiple. I could totally see that. I could see Brunson doing his thing in one and Tyrese doing one in another game.
I mean, Nembhard's 3 you could make from last year. Probably add that to the list.
Yeah, you could. So, yeah, man, it'll be a lot of fun. I know Knicks fans are stoked about it. Pacers fans are stoked about it. It'll be a lot of fun, man.
So as we wrap up here, again, make sure to follow Mike at Indy Sports or IEFR at the Chill Mike on X. You can follow me on X at NYC Sports IE at Commander555. It's going to be a really fun series. Really quick, Mike, what do you like in the other series? I know that starts after people hear this, but Minnesota, Oklahoma City. What do you think?
Well, my heart goes to Minnesota because Mike Conley grew up just down the road from me. So my heart goes there, but I think it's OKC.
I think my head goes with Thunder. Like, actually, you know what? My head and heart are going to go with Minnesota because I think the world is going to really hate a Timberwolves-Knicks final because we're just going to have to relive Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo, Tips facing his old team, and all that stuff. I think the Minnesota Knicks finals will make people sick, which means I want it. I want them to get Edwards. Let's go. That would be a lot of fun. I love what the Thunder are doing. I love what Shai's doing. And it would also mean Timberwolves winner of this series to get home court in the finals. So that would be better for both these teams. Again, I think it's going to be a great series. Be sure to check out my show every Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern. Catch PRCS Sports every Friday at noon Eastern. I know this week you'll get the differing opinion from Game 1, and we will talk about preview Game 2 on both of our shows. You'll also hear Fever Liberty talk this week, which is going to be, again, as we talked about earlier, 2 great point guards in Keaton Clark and Manescu. Indiana's got some veteran depth. New York showed off the Josh Cloud and Brianna Stewart in Game 1 against Vegas. They play Chicago, I think, tomorrow. So, sure to check that out. Both of us during this series. It's a lot of fun. They see us do this again at some point. Maybe we'll do a post game or something during this series. I think that's going to make this a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it again. The fact that the city is buzzing so much from both of these cities with how good these teams have been, and making it a big surprise to both of them here is great. It's going to be a lot of fun. So make sure you check that out throughout the course of the series. We're going to be live tweeting this game. We might be tweeting back and forth to each other. We might send cool memes to each other. I don't know, but this is going to be a fun next 2 weeks. From all of us at IE Sports Radio, to Larry B and our entire team, Big Mike, I'm Ricky K, saying have a great rest of your day. Enjoy Game 1 of Knicks